Now, if you've ever had someone in your life who suffers from alcohol use disorder, a close family member, a spouse, a child, a parent, a close friend, this is going to make sense to you. If you haven't, it may not make as much sense, but there is a certain dance that you have to do when you in management of someone that you have to do in your life when you have someone who suffers from alcohol use disorder. It goes between self-preservation, taking care of oneself, dealing with one's own mental anguish and animosity and frustration, and having to placate that person in a way. In placating, I mean, really enabling them sometimes just so that you can have peace of mind, maybe have a decent evening or a period of time in your life. Maybe say, yeah, here's a bottle of wine, here's some alcohol, I need a break. You need to leave me alone for a while, and that type of situation. And it does become self-preservation because ultimately it becomes an impossible situation and it's not sustainable. And the thing is, it's amazing, looking back, if you know my story, again, I was married for 25 years and my wife passed away from AUD a little over 5 years ago. And it's just amazing the things that become normalized in your life. And I'm going to tell a story. I've told this before, but I'm going to tell it a little bit more in depth of, the day she drove through the front of our house and she was extremely inebriated. And just getting used to, taking cars to body shops and getting them fixed and dealing with insurance. It's just amazing how normalized that become. So listen further for the rest of the story. Again, I have a complete coaching program. It's really designed to help both the alcoholic and the family. Essentially the alcoholic, but it's important to get the family involved because it's a family disease. If you're ready to change your life and change the trajectory of what's going on with you, set up a breakthrough call. Link is in the bio. It takes about 45 minutes. We're going to do a deep dive into what's going on with you in your life. The call is free. The course is definitely not. I'm looking for people who are committed and for people who want to change their life. Set up a call and I'll talk to you on the other side. And it's funny, I remember the day it happened. It was probably 4 years before she passed away, but it was definitely one of those watershed moments where you realized an anxiety-filled days that you just, you can't believe it's happening, but it becomes your new normal. And I remember coming home from work and the garage door went up. We had a 3-car garage, 3 wide, and 2 of it was one door, and it went up. And I drove into the garage, and it was always frightening to realize that Amanda wasn't home in the middle of the day because her car was gone. She had a BMW X5. It was a green one. I've shown pictures of it, and there's so much the legend of the her car, but it was gone, and that was always terrifying because, like, where is she? She's not supposed to be driving. She didn't have a license at this point because it had been revoked because she probably had 2 or 3 DUIs at this point. She was driving in an uninsured vehicle, probably inebriated, but where she got the keys, again, I used to hide them and she would find them. Eventually I had to put them in a vault, and after this incident, the last couple of years of her life, I ended up actually just removing the battery from the car. It was just a crazy situation, but to digress, her car was gone, and I came home from work. I remember feeling very, very anxiety filled, and it was a very, very scary moment. So I had gotten home earlier that day, maybe 3:30, 4 in the afternoon, and it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and she still wasn't home. And I knew there was nothing good from it going to happen from it because she wasn't answering texts. And I called a couple of her friends. They hadn't seen her. Obviously, she wasn't shopping. She was probably drinking wine in a parking lot somewhere, or just pulled over somewhere to do that. And she did that occasionally because she knew, drinking at home wasn't an optional. Certainly, if I was going to be around. At least not openly. And I can remember walking out into the garage, and there's these set of windows across the top, like a regular garage door, and I can remember looking up, out the window down my tippy toes, and because I could hear the car coming down the road. It was a cul-de-sac, but you could hear it coming around. It was a big engine. It was a 5-liter engine. I mean, I could hear the car coming. And as I looked out the window, I'll never forget it, just saw the grill of the car coming up the driveway. And the moment I saw that, I realized it wasn't stopping. That was a scary moment. I mean, there was no brakes, and I think I could tell Amanda's head was like on the dashboard. She wasn't even looking forward. So at the moment I jumped out of the way, I had like a little man cave in the far section of the garage, and I had some couches and a TV in there. And I actually jumped over the couch to get out of the way because I could tell what was going to happen. And at that exact moment, the BMW came crashing through the the big garage door. Came crashing right through it like it wasn't even there. And it's just an aluminum door. So, I mean, you've got a 2.5-ton vehicle coming through the front, right through the door. And the only thing that stopped it was the frame of the garage door, the aluminum wrapped around the frame of the truck, and the wheels were still spinning. So she had her foot on the gas. It wasn't even taking it off. And I ran around the front of the car after getting up off the floor, and I had to physically open the door, push her foot off the gas, put the car in park, and take the key out of the car. And her head was on the steering wheel, and she was passed out, and she had been driving. Then I can remember after I turned the car off, I mean, she kind of woke up a little bit because I had to push her out of the way to get the car in park. And she just kind of looked at me like this, like, what happened? And she was very confused. And I just kind of stood next to her, and I didn't say anything. I was just kind of like, I think we were both really traumatized, to say the least. I mean, there's dust flying around. It did damage to my car that was sitting next to it because the garage door smashed on the top, screwed up the paint on that. So, I mean, there was two insurance claims right there. Make a long story short, it took me about an hour to get her upstairs. It was very difficult for her to walk. She was extremely inebriated. We had to get up the back stairs, got her up into bed. The next morning she came down, and I'll never forget this. She goes, what happened to the garage? What happened? And it was all smashed in. It was basically gone. So our garage was completely open with this aluminum door hanging down. And she didn't know what had happened. And I said, what do you think happened? You drove through it yesterday. And she goes, I did? And I realized that what a terrifying time to be involved with to this depth of a disease. And I mean, we can always talk about why and how she got here, but dealing with it as a family member, this type of incident is something that cannot be normalized. And I tell it because if this is becoming normalized, well, major changes have to take effect in your life. Major changes. Either the separation of that relationship, or that person has to go into a serious profession. He needs to seek serious professional help in the form of detox, rehabilitation, and continued outpatient care once they get out. There's really no other avenue. They have to double down and make it a priority in their life, because this is a life or death situation. And I hope this story and so many other stories that I tell from the family perspective helps you in making your decisions on how to move forward in your life if you find yourself in a similar situation. And really, to continue the story, this isn't about, ragging on somebody that really has a mental disability. And that's really what I call it. They're mentally disabled when they have alcohol use disorder because their mind is not functioning properly. But to continue the story, I mean, I ended up having to pay for a whole new garage door, which was somewhere around, I don't know, at the time, $1,600. I had somebody come out, we had to redo the garage door opener, and then the frame of the house was actually cracked, so we had to come out, and I mean, that was thousands of dollars, the frame around the whole garage door, and she'd broken one of the main pillars that held up the garage itself. So it was kind of a big deal. Then, the car itself was probably in the neighborhood of $10,000 worth of damage. I mean, the windshield was cracked, the front hood, the bumper, the frame of the car. I mean, I don't know. I was just amazed the whole thing wasn't just totaled. And luckily, my insurance covered it, most of it. But still, the truck was in, it was probably in the body shop for a good close to 3 months because there was so much damage to it. And then my car had to go into the body shop. Parts of it had to be repainted, had to have a new back window put in because it was cracked from the door falling on top of it. I mean, all of this because of alcohol. And the reason why I talk about it's not really about the alcoholic. This one's really about, this is why it's a family disease, because it becomes something that you have to deal with, and it becomes normalized on a regular basis. And if this is relatable to you, I mean, my advice is double down on them getting help. If they're willing to. Amanda was willing to. She did go to 7 rehabs, and it was fairly consistent the last 6-7 years of her life. She went to 1 or 2 rehabs really a year. She was either in a rehab, she was in jail, she was in a hospital, she was in an outpatient facility, almost continuously. And she was in the hospital a lot because she had a lot of operations. But it was a continual process. And this is why I hung in there, because I think she genuinely tried and she genuinely knew she had a problem. But it just kept wearing down on us, and certainly myself, because it was one thing after another. And really, I don't want these to be designed as a rant, because that's not what they're for. This was years ago, has nothing to do with what's going on in my life. I've certainly long since moved on, and that's kind of the mindset you have to have when you have an alcoholic in the family. Either they're going to get healthy, and they're going to find sobriety, sustainable sobriety, and they're going to change their life, or they're not, or they're going to succumb to the disease. There's only 3 choices: sobriety, dying, that's a choice. Or second one is they continue to drink. Maybe they might live a little bit longer, but at that point, maybe it's time to part ways with that person, no matter what the relationship. And again, I was on my way out at 25 years. Okay, and I've told that story, but I was in the process of legal separation when my wife, I dropped her off in her 7th rehab, and she fell down a flight of stairs and ultimately succumbed to the disease. But maybe you don't need to take it as far as I did, but she was a good person. That's the problem. And lots of alcoholics are good people, but be aware of how it's affecting you as a family member and how far you want to go down that road. And really, one of the last things I want to say is, after I think it was a good 3 months, the car was in the shop. 2 days after getting it in the shop, I don't know where she got the keys. She got the keys, backed out of the garage door after it had been completely fixed, and forgot to open the garage door. She literally backed through what was a brand new garage door. Brand new. And then she caught the front bumper on the corner of the car. I think she was probably inebriated, and I came home and the whole garage door was destroyed again. And the front bumper of a completely repaired X5 BMW was sitting on the garage floor. And I looked at her and I go, if you've been drinking, you're going to a rehab tonight, or we're getting a divorce. And I remember that conversation. I just looked at it. I looked at the door. I said, I don't care. This is it for me. You're either going to a rehabilitation facility detox tonight, or I'm filing for a divorce tomorrow. I'll leave it up to you what you want to do. And that was my intervention. I'm not going to lose my shit. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And that's what you have to get to. You have to remove yourself from your own emotions, because they will eat you up. And, of course, she went to a rehab. But then, again, we had to deal with the door and the car all over again. I think I ended up just jerry-rigging the bumper. I was so fed up with it. I got some really strong wire and just wired it back on the car, and that was enough of it. I ended up taking the battery out of the car, and it wasn't really going to be used a whole lot anyways after that, unless I needed it for something. But that's where I was at. If this is relatable, please like, share, comment. Comments are great. And I wish you the best in your struggle with having an alcoholic in your family. And I know this video is a tad long for TikTok, but if you want to get the longer version, I make a longer version of this also on YouTube. And again, link is in the link tree if you want to see the longer version. Again, the memoir is called Amanda, A Cautionary Tale of Alcoholism. You can find this in the link tree. The website is, you can purchase on the website. There's also an international link. It's available anywhere in the world. It's also available on Amazon. The ebook is also available on Amazon, the Apple website, and Barnes & Noble. And again, thanks so much for listening.